Laurel and Vista Alegre 200 Years Luxury Brands Summit proudly present our third panel, Retail. The challenges of retail for the next generation. We are pleased to announce our speakers, João Barbosa, Alegre CEO, and Felipe Gonçalves, Sograp board member.
So, João,
yes,
a pleasure to have you here today with us to gather your insights of retail for the next generations, right? So, R&D is a company with offices across the world, aiming to provide insights on how brands should leverage their experience at physical stores, right? And as you keep saying, the reason behind your success is the ability to put people at the heart of whatever you do, and also now leverage with new technologies and AI, right? So the fascinating part of this is how come that on such a traditional business or sector like retail, now new technologies are allowing us to provide more exciting experiences to our consumers. So within that, my first question is for you is, so what does it mean to you, store? How have they evolved? How will they look like? And what will be the future of retail?
wow.
It's a lot of questions, probably.
So, despite the fact that I'm 188 tall, I feel very small before you. Because after all these presentations and speeches and analysis, I'm not sure what I'm doing here, but anyway. And accidentally, I said to my wife this morning, I feel a bit nervous because I'm going to be in front of a magnificent audience. She said, well, don't pretend to be intelligent, don't pretend to be smart, don't pretend to be funny, just be yourself. She's an expert in motivational coaching. If by chance you need any advice, call her. And then she asked me, when are you talking, before or after lunch? Actually, after lunch, just a little bit after lunch. I said, well, I have one more suggestion for you. And what is that? Good luck. So, what is a store? Well, that's a relatively easy question to answer. I've been in this business for 35 years, more than 40 countries now. And I've been a little bit all over the place. And it's an interesting question because it's a question that has been challenged by many people. I've been hearing the end of retail for so long now. Brick and mortar is going to be death, blah, blah, blah. But in fact, physical retail is the only platform where you can express brands in a three-dimensional way. It's the platform where you can explore all human senses at the same time. And it's the platform where you can achieve the maximum brand humanization. So if this is not enough, quite honestly, I don't know what can be. So in terms of a store and what retail is like, a store is like an orchestra. And it needs to play fine-tuned to achieve maximum efficiency. It needs to play in a fine-tuned manner. And the beauty of retail for me is exactly that. You have to combine many different elements of the retail mix and ensure that they all play tune at the same time. Just imagine an orchestra and the guy from the trombone is 2 seconds ahead of the orchestra, 2 seconds behind. That will be enough to destroy the old tune. And retail, the beauty of retail for me and the beauty of the stores is exactly this. It needs to work with perfect harmony. But your question comes a little bit further than that. And I would like to give a little bit of a context, probably a little bit of historical context. Because retail, in the form of trade, is the oldest profession in the world. Okay, I'm seeing some naughty smiles whenever I say this, but it is, and it's if you go to a market in any city or town in the UK, for example, York, Chester, Liverpool, Oxford, Cambridge, whatever, and you go back 400 years, and you go now, you're going to see the same sort of DNA. It's people who have products or services to sell, people who wants to buy those products or those services, and they get together on that platform called store, and they exchange products for money or whatever. And I usually have this question for me: if retail had to be an animal, what kind of animal that would be? And it was funny because as I jumped into this room this morning, I saw this friend of mine and said, if retail had to be an animal, it would be a crocodile. And that's when I saw it. I said, what the hell are you doing here today? I guess he knew I was coming anyway. But, crocodiles, they lived for millions of years and they kept their DNA. They adapted over time. Some of them, they have longer noses to catch fish in an easier way. Some of them have big, strong jaws to get big prey. But retail has been here for 5,000 years and is exactly the same thing. Is an industry where things have evolved, but not necessarily, we didn't see necessarily a disruption on its DNA, right? So if you look back to the big inventions on the 19th century, 20th century, and we've been talking about innovations and inventions and being creative and all that. But if you look at the big inventions of the last 2 centuries, the ones that really made a huge mark in our lifestyle, retail is not part of it. Actually, retail is absorbing those inventions, but it's not the inventor. In fact, the only thing that retail, in my modest opinion, has invented was just retail. And after that, 5,000 years ago, they didn't invent anything else. It's arguable, and I know it's controversial. I understand that. So, the beauty of retail has been to be able, in a very smart way, to adapt to new circumstances. Like the crocodiles, exactly, and become much more efficient and less concerned about other stuff. And like the crocodiles, they use their energy and their power, and then when the moment comes, they get the customer and eat. That's what they do. By the way, I have to tell you that on an exercise I did, I found 27 store formats, different store formats, which is exactly the number of different crocodile species. Now, that takes me to the next part of your question, right? The future. Everybody loves to talk about the future. Oof! Everybody's obsessed about the future. And my first advice would be, well, try to be obsessed about doing right what you have to do now. Don't be so obsessed about the future, because the future is quite unpredictable. Still an interesting thing to do, still an interesting exercise to do. And I had this story of a CEO of a big retailer company once approached me and said, João, I would like you to think our stores thinking in the next 15 years. And so why the hell do you want to do that? Because in 15 years, I'm not sure I'm alive, I'm not sure you are alive, and quite frankly, I don't think your shareholders are willing to wait 15 years to see how the store is going to look like. So quite frankly, I think you need to look at what you have to do best now. And actually, when you think about all the unpredictability that we have, wars. Now, we had lots of plans and strategies. A pandemic came. We had lots of plans and strategies. A war comes. And now more war comes and more uncertainty happens. So the only certainty I have is that we're going to live under a huge uncertainty. And that reminds me about predicting the future. Before my mother got married, she went to see a seer. And the seer, this old lady, said to my mom, "Oh, you're going to be surrounded by girls." Well, my mother got married, and she had 3 naughty boys. And during my youth, I heard my mother complaining about that seer, which was, well, how come am I surrounded by girls? You know, I'm these 3 animals around me. But she lived long enough, and now she has 5 granddaughters. She's 87, she has very bad temper, so she's going to live forever. And if she keeps living long enough, she will end up probably with 5 granddaughters and 15 granddaughters. So if you live long enough, all your predictions will be true. Huh? And I had this interesting exercise. So I look at a big consulting firm, which I will not disclose the name because I don't want to advertise my competition. But I look at them and I read what would the trends according the trends for the retail, the future of retail. Okay, so what's going to be the big innovative things that's going to happen? And I just took some notes. Forgive me, aging is also looking at my memory. So the first one, it was, yes, personalization or customization. What about the tailors from the 17th century? Is that really innovative? Talking about personalization, customization. If I go to a butcher, for example, that's what I do. If I go to a fishmonger, that's what I do. If I go to a tailor, that's what I do. So when we talk about innovative things and innovation and these kind of things, I think we need to kind of make it on a relative platform. We need to relativize exactly what innovation means and what is, sustainability. That was the other one. And I said, well, sustainability, actually, we want to go back to sustainability because when my grandparents were alive, we had a lot more sustainability than we have today. So now we destroy the planet, now we want to go back. So it's not innovation, it's just going back to the initial stage of our civilization. Deliver at home. Well, that's what I had when I was 6 years old. I have the milk deliver at my home, the bread deliver at my home, now under a different form. Is this innovation? I don't know. Cashier-free stores, another one, cashier-free stores. Amazon announced Amazon and Go, 3,000 stores, cashier-free, no cash, no cashiers, nothing, opt in, go in, cameras everywhere. From the 3,000 they announced, if my sources are correct, they opened 30 stores. 30. Expensive. I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm saying just it's difficult. In Europe, we have the privacy data regulations, which put a lot of obstacles in terms of computer vision. Actually, we stopped the computer vision program because of that. And then the other one was shift to smaller formats, which is, again, go back to exactly where we started in terms of retail. We started with retail with small formats and went to big formats, and now we're going back to small formats again. And then the last one, which I think is important, which is from digital to phygital. Well, this is the same company. I heard several years ago that digital was going to crash brick and mortar retail. Now there's an evolution, which is fine. It's phygital, which I think is great stuff. So, and actually, I remember 10 years ago, I attended a conference in London, and there was one guy saying, oh, digital, you're going to die, brick and mortar, you're going to die. At the end of the conference, I met him because I was really interested in his perspective. I could see my job in, in risk. I suddenly, where am I going to feed my women, right? Because I have one wife and 3 daughters, so I spend all my money on women, and so I need to get some cash getting in. And the guy said, so you are worried, aren't you? And I said, no, I'm not worried. I think retailers should not be worried. They should be ready. They should be ready for the uncertainty and to become agile. Actually, that's what they need to do. And one friend of mine asked me, well, if you were CEO of a big retail corporation, how would you organize the C-suite? And I said to him, oh, God, don't make me a CEO of anything, please. And I said, I think you can keep the same C's, the CFO definitely, the CMO, the CTO, the CLO, this whatever O's you have there, but just add one more, the CSO. CSO, what's CSO? Chief Simplifier Officer, which makes everything quite simpler, so your company can become a lot more agile and react much faster to the uncertainty times that we're going to have. So, I just have one more note here, actually, about the stores and the adaptations and blah, blah, blah. And the thing that e-commerce is going to crash physical retail, about the future of retail. So the future of retail, just to know that I got these stats where between 54 and 60% of the e-commerce websites that opened in the UK during 2020, 2022 already shut down. So, and at the same time, if we see the number of stores that open and closed in the UK, we have 1.5% the net balance that stores closed overall, the retail park existing in the UK. So my prediction, because I'm entitled to have a prediction, is that stores will need to allow brands to breathe a lot more to explain their story, and they need to be more. They need to be less boring in many ways. They need to be more exciting. They need to interact more with people. But I wouldn't spend a lot of time trying to predict the future. I would probably ensure that the company is really prepared to whatever comes. No. I can be very quickly in terms of changing the operations, in terms of marketing plans, in terms of everything.
And you keep saying
long answer, right?
Yes.
Oh,
and picking on what you've just said, and you keep saying that the best way to address that is by being obsessed about observing people when they go into a physical store, right?
Is what, sorry?
It's about being obsessed about observing people when they go.
No, that's my obsession, really.
That's your obsession.
My obsession. Right? Yeah, that's also a funny story. That's one of the reasons I love retail, physical retail. It's because it's a behavioral science. We need to understand how people behave, what they do, how they think, what they like, what they dislike, and it's a very common situation for me when I visit a store with clients. There's two things they do. One is, what do you think of my store? That's a typical question. I said, so how profitable is the store, and how happy are you with your profitability? And said, well, if he says, okay, I'm good, no, you have a beautiful store. And if the profitability is not all that good, I said, well, it's an horrible store. End of the story. So it's easy to describe. But also, the thing is, I feel that people sometimes are a little bit obsessed with products and architectural details and things. And I think I'm more concerned. The first thing I like to do is really observe people. Let me tell you this example that happened to me in South Africa, Joburg. It's a very simplistic and basic example, but I just want to kind of illustrate what I'm thinking. And so this was on a posh supermarket in a wealthy area in Joburg. And there was an elder gentleman. He was just standing in front of a 4-bay biscuit. So it's 4 bays, like about 5 meters full of biscuits, all sorts of biscuits. And, this gentleman was there, and I noticed that he was there for about 2 or 3 minutes at least. And I approached the gentleman, and I noticed he was struggling with something, and he said, well, sir, I would like to, it seems that you're struggling with something. Can I help you? Oh, I have a granddaughter, and I would like to take some biscuits to her. And I said, okay, how old is she? Oh, she's 11. Okay. So I picked a pack of biscuits with chocolate, because every children likes chocolate, right? So I couldn't miss it. So I think this is great. So I met the group that was visiting the store with me, the team from the client. They already were 30 meters away. And the story is that I asked them, do you have any particular issue with the biscuit category? And they said, yeah, we have lots of problems because our price is too high. So I think you may have a slightly different problem. And your slightly different problem may be called choice paralysis. You have such a huge assortment that in the end, they don't know what to choose. Actually, the other thing I also notice in some clients, which they have sometimes the pieces in like a museum, and the products cannot express themselves properly, and brands cannot express themselves properly. So read the behavior of people is absolutely critical. But it's also important, and we have this triangle. I don't want to advertise anything that we do, but it's important to understand what people think, what people do, and what people buy. Just imagine a square with 3 sides, okay? So what people do, people buy, and people think is important, because what I think I may not do. What I do, I may not convert in a purchase, and I may have purchases that I didn't even think of. So our kind of research is pretty much based on understanding the 3 elements of consumer behavior, which is now the risk of not doing this. It's called WAR, and WAR, it's WOR, and it stands for walkout rates, which is people leaving the store without buying anything. In the fashion industry, easily you will find 67% of people leaving the store without buying anything. And actually, let me tell you another story about observing people and how that is important. And I think, for example, in the luxury market, I think it would be interesting, because this is so sensitive. I wonder that along with the CSO, you also have people from psychology or some social sciences in your store staff, trying to understand what people do and what people want, and leading them in the right direction. One thing that happened to me was, I'm not disclosing the brand name, but there was a very, very famous brand that asked me to visit stores with them. And by the end, I said to them, well, we wrapped up in a small Costa Coffee in London. And they asked me, so John, what do you think about our stores? And I think you have to have a plan to avoid bankruptcy. I never heard of them again. But the fact was, the sad part of the story was that this huge fashion brand really bankrupted. And now you tell me, why did I guess? Well, it was a mathematical thing. 85% walkout rate with all the stock density they had, with all the choice paralysis, with the huge amount of stock and all that real estate. And you sum 2 plus 2 and you get to the conclusion that it's not going to work out. So understand customers and also non-customers is for me a big concern.
Got it.
Yeah.
On a different topic, when it comes to luxury retail, what does it mean, and what's the little extra that we can add in order to move into an ordinary retail store into an extraordinary retail store?
Ordinary to extraordinary?
What's a little extra? What makes the difference?
You can't afford to be ordinary. It's simple as that. You need to be extraordinary, no matter the market if you are a luxury store, if you are a supermarket, if you are whatever store you are, you can't afford to be ordinary. And I think, but I'll give you, I'll give you an answer you probably like. I think retail will need to be a lot more exciting, a lot less boring in some areas particularly. But I think, again, if you think about the necessity of having the orchestra playing at the same time, that's what makes everything extraordinary. To have all your brand architecture, represented in the store, and the store humanize it, and the store kind of represented properly, and all the instruments are playing in tune. That's exactly what I think is what takes from ordinary to extraordinary. And when you fail to do that, you become ordinary, and when you become ordinary, you struggle.
Consistency.
A lot. Yeah, that's
consistency. Got it. And when it comes to AI and digital, how is it helping us nowadays in order to improve the shopper experience?
Now, let me give you my perspective on that as well. Now, everybody talks about AI. I would start thinking about, so going back a little bit, first we had the Industrial Revolution. Then we had the Digital Revolution. And on our way, it's a 3 tsunami revolution, which AI plus biotechnology plus quantum computing. The 3 will produce an enormous change in all our lives. AI, I was hearing the previous group. My very good friend, Dr. Seung Park in South Korea, he did his PhD thesis at the University of Florida, Miami University, Florida, in 1990 about artificial intelligence. That's how far AI goes. How far back AI goes. And what I think is coming is a completely revolution, not only in terms of intensity, but also in terms of speed. And that's going to change our lives in a big way. Biotechnology, for example, and genetics can change how materials are produced. Can help a lot in terms of sustainability. If we talk about quantum computing, just imagine a computer doing in 10 seconds what the normal computer would take 10,000 years to do. So you can see how this will change everything. But obviously technology will play, in my opinion, will play a major role in retail. Things like for example, if you look to logistics, for example, if you look to waste, if you look to human interactivity, if you look at virtual stock, for example, if you look at things with computer vision to understand the consumer behavior, all those kind of things will increase not only the attractiveness of the store, but also its efficiency, which is for me the most concerning and the most important thing on a physical retail store. Now, I don't want to sell you guys anything, but just ourselves, we developed an algorithm to design floor plans.
Please.
So floor plans, store floor plans. So the floor plan of the store that we used to be done by an architect, we developed an algorithm, and we can design now a macro floor plan. We developed algorithms to understand shopping missions, shopping patterns, shopping missions, and shopping behavior and patterns, and then this and that. We developed algorithms to analyze category performance. We analyze algorithms to understand, for example, in the mass market, it's important to understand, for example, promotions, how they really are efficient or not. So, there's a big challenge there, and there's a big opportunity. And one of the things I think is, I always said to my daughters, by the way, when you choose what you want to do, choose something that it's not going to be replaced by a machine, okay? And I think the consequence of this is that technology overall will release human beings to do what really matters, which is look after the others, to be creative, to be innovative, to think. We're born to think. Not the verb to do, I think, is going to be lost in this century because robots or whatever will probably do it. And I don't want to, be obsessed with the future, but just let me give you this small think about what the wave that is expecting us. Teleportation of very small particles is already possible. So if you want to do the teleportation of an atom, for example, that is already possible. We are too far away of teleportation of human beings, obviously, and big objects, but very small particles we can do already. So you see, how can increase the capacity or the ability of the store to improve a much more seamless experience, more engaging, and give the opportunity to brands to really come up with a lot more power, if that makes sense.
It does. To conclude, if a brand would be trying to establish a luxury retail business, would come to you asking you for a couple of advices, Portuguese brand, which would be the advices that you'd give them?
Well, hire me.
It's a good one.
No, I think you're talking about luxury? Or
Luxury retail.
I think there are a couple of things, and many things you guys already, some of the previous panels already touched those points. But I think if I can highlight something is, I think people need to be very resilient and, from the entrepreneurial side of it, let's say, and specifically for the Portuguese, I think we need to dare a lot more to start with. If I can reach 40 plus countries and I'm just on the verge of getting one more on my list, I'm quite sure that everybody can. So that's a possibility, but we need to dare. And I think that what sometimes is important, I see many people coming to me that are starting the business saying, I have a fantastic product. Well, the product is not exactly all you need. You need the brand. And you need to have a brand architecture that is really tells a story. I think there is one question that I normally ask people, and people normally cannot answer at the beginning, is why does the world need me? And once you can understand this answer, you probably start to be on the right path. But I think also we need to go, abroad. We need to go to markets. We need to dare in markets where, not only in Portugal, but in other markets that are relevant. I think there are industries where the barriers to entry are much tougher than others. For example. I think we have, as Portuguese, we have our own DNA, and we have our traditional industries that can eventually make things easier. And I think also that people need to go and try. Don't try to do everything at once. This is a lifetime job, okay? People will compete against companies and brands that are, 200 years old, 100 years old. I've seen companies not lasting more than 6 years or 7 years. So that's my advice, is really to be resilient, to create a very strong brand architecture, to have obviously very fantastic product, but not be afraid if during the test period don't get too emotional about things, and go back a little bit to square one if they need to, until they have a decent MVP to be in the market. Have a great financial discipline, because that's the reason why most of them collapse before they take off. And and you can also hire my wife as a bonus.
So, are you and your wife therefore more go abroad from product to brand? It takes time, resilience, not to be afraid, and financial discipline.
Yeah, I think Portuguese, if we go 500 years back, we discover half of the world. We used to there. Now we don't used to there all that much, and I think it's a shame, because we can achieve so many things. Just as a side note, this is not in the program, by the way, but I belong to the Portuguese Diaspora Council. The Portuguese Diaspora Council is a council that gathers Portuguese people all over the world. We have 300 councillors, and you cannot imagine the capacity that we have abroad. The quality of the professionals, the Portuguese professionals. So there's a lot to leverage on. Yeah.
João, thank you very much.
My pleasure.